Now to that heartbreaking interview with the uncle of the 10-year-old boy who was found lost and alone in South Texas.
In an interview obtained by ABC News, ABC 7's Rachel Phillips gives you a look at the events leading up to the boy finding a Border Patrol agent through the eyes of his uncle, and some say that the law put the boy in this position. Rachel.
Kate and JC, we learned today that the boy crossed into the U.S. with his mother and his two cousins, only to be expelled back into Mexico and just hours later kidnapped, which leads us to this.
Huh?
The words of a desperate and scared Wilton Obregon. According to his uncle, Misael Obregon, Wilton initially crossed the border last month with his mum and two cousins, Obregon's children. Obregon's kids were allowed in, but Wilton and his mum were deported back to Mexico and then kidnapped and held for ransom.
I did what I could. I gathered as much money as I could, but it was only enough for my nephew.
Wilton and his mother were expelled to Mexico under Title 42, which is a pandemic-era policy that expels migrants who aren't unaccompanied minors crossing the border. The policy does not allow them to apply for protection.
Title 42 should have never been implemented in the first place. It was called a policy to deal with a pandemic when in fact it really was a policy designed to deal with border enforcement.
Ruben Garcia told ABC 7 this isn't the first time he's heard a story like Wilton's, and if Title 42 stays in place, it won't be the last.
They get expelled almost as if they have a tattoo of a dollar sign on the forehead, because they become targets for gangs, for cartels, to then kidnap them and hold them for extortion.
According to Wilton's uncle, his mum is still being held captive.
If my sister can't cross, I'm going to take care of him until he becomes a man.
Garcia said he wants to see Title 42 come to an end so people like Wilton and his mother are better protected. But many are concerned if that happens, we'll see the surge intensify. Garcia, however, is confident it can be done.
There's no question that we can set up the process. There's no question that it can be done in a safe way and that it can be done in a way that eliminates the potential for corruption or manipulation by the gangs or the cartels.
And Ruben Garcia told me that the unwinding of Title 42 should be done in a similar way to that of the Migrant Protection Protocol because it's working so extremely well right now. And Kate and JC, this story, just an example of how desperate some migrants are to cross into the U.S., even willing to put their lives in jeopardy. You can see some kids just here behind me, standing here at the border. Reporting live from the U.S.-Mexico border, Rachel Phillips, ABC 7.
Certainly a desperate situation. Thank you for that report, Rachel. And Title 42 is a Trump-era policy that closed the border to, quote, non-essential travel. And in June, the former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection testified in Congress that it was a necessary public health measure to prevent migrants from bringing COVID into the United States.
In the midst of this public health pandemic, this global pandemic, the priority must be to contain and mitigate the spread of this virus and to keep it from further being introduced in the U.S.